Hey friends, this is JB with Cyber Christ and Country, and today we're looking at a little article here. One of the things I'm trying to do is get a little bit more focus on issues so as to help you understand them a little bit better. This is a censorship case, and the title is a little bit far-fetched. Huge Supreme Court will hear case to decide if far-left giants can censor users. Of course, you know that, well, maybe you don't know, because it depends what kind of news you are really watching. If you're watching the local evening news, if you're reading the local papers, and if you're watching the mainstream media, which is your CNN, which is your ABC News, CNBC News, that sort of thing, um, to some extent Fox News as well, you are not going to get certain information. It's just not going to be on their list of things to report on. So you just may not even realize this. But here's what's going on. Like it or not, Google has been censoring. Facebook has been censoring. Twitter has been censoring. And so essentially, what does that mean? Well, it seems good. Like if someone doesn't agree with your line of thinking, and maybe you even feel offended. Let's say say JB's an a-hole, okay? And it seems, oh man, I mean, do you really need to say that? You know, it's kind of like that's a little offensive, friend. I would love for them just to be suppressed. Let's just close them off. But what if it's me who says Jesus Christ died for your sins, okay? And then that other person is like, "No, that's offensive to me. This is a free country, and I don't need to hear your pontificating of who is God. We have the right to what do they call it? Separation of church and state, which has nothing to do with removing faith from the world. It had to do with something more of the Catholic theocracy than it did with actual removing faith. But they could want to censor me too. Okay, so what has to be basically the has to be allowed is a free speech. And the problem with it is people are so twisted, they go to such extents that are so offensive to a Christian, but yet those people get so offended by Christians. So we have to basically say there should be free speech as a way to allow all people to voice their opinion, to even voice their opinion against government. Because if we're not able to do so, they could suppress us, like in China, like in Great Britain, like in Germany. And if you're like JB, well, I've heard about China suppressing people, but I've not heard about Great Britain suppressing people. I've not heard of Germany suppressing people. Oh yeah, they are. They are, and they're doing it. They're not allowing certain people to report on certain Islamic terror, Islamic crimes, rape crimes. They've been doing it. And if you're not familiar with that, then you need to do some homework because this article is not so much about this. Our session today is not so much about that. Google is censoring, Facebook is censoring, Blogger is censoring, Twitter is censoring. Okay, and so here's a few of the statistics here. Facebook has eliminated 93% of the traffic of top conservative news outlets, and you're like, what? How is that? How can they even do that? Well, they've got algorithms, they say. Okay, they got algorithms. So here are a few different things. Different conservative news sites. Okay, and their numbers have dropped. How can they be dropped? Well, they stop allowing them to advertise. They trim people's ability to see them. They do things such as shadow banning. Facebook began stamping out conservative news in January 2017. Now, look, friends, this is both cyber, and you are in the cyber age, and you also are talking about your country. And if you're talking about faith, if you associate faith with conservative views, it's not really a one for one. Um, they're not they're not mutually exclusive necessarily, but not all conservative. A lot of conservative is secular. It's not Christian based, but nonetheless, it's usually much more tied to Christian values today because there is a lot of inclusive ideas between conservative, quote unquote, conservative ideas today and Christian values. Here is a drop of 93.7 million to 6.8 million from January. This is just 6 months. That's a big start, sharp, steep drop. Okay. Now, report Facebook eliminates 93% of the traffic to top conservative websites. Okay. Well, the U.S. Supreme Court, this article is about the U.S. Supreme Court, has decided to hear a case on whether users can challenge social media companies on free speech grounds. And this could be seminal. Um, the problem I have with this is that we continue to push legislation to the Supreme Court versus getting our legislatures to legislation to actually create laws which will in fact solve the problem, or attempt to solve the problem, sort of nip the problem in the bud, and until another part of the problem pops up, then you need more legislation. So while this sounds good, and I do hope the Supreme Court hears this case, and this case centers on whether private operator of public access television network is considered a state actor which can be sued for First Amendment violations. Part of the problem with Facebook and Twitter is that Facebook and Twitter are seen as a private company and are not subject to the First Amendment rule, okay, of free speech, right? They can say, well, it's our company, so we can kind of steer things the way we want. But the problem is they start and gather users to the tune of millions of users, and then they change their policies bit by bit until what once was an open platform, Facebook once was an open platform, is now closing their platform. And you think like, well, we can't have child pedophilia being shown on Facebook. We should censor that, and no one's arguing against that. We should not. On the other hand, uh, when Facebook starts to suppress Christianity, the spreading of the gospel, the spreading of values that align with Christianity, no homosexuality, for example, that becomes a little touchy, and they start to suppress that. And is as radical Islam has spread to the UK, the United Kingdom, to Germany, their social movement over there is to allow their Sharia rule in certain areas, or um, to cover up some of the rape gangs that have been going on that have been predominantly from these Muslim immigrants who have come from North Africa, and they have worked to really suppress this. It's as if um, and the people who have reported on that, such as Tommy Robinson, have been actually literally thrown in jail arbitrarily through the government edicts. Different courts in the UK have done that. Um, so, so this is a pretty hot topic for cyber Christ and country because it encompasses all the cyber, a lot of the conservative values that Christians have. It's not all, okay? Some conservative values, quote unquote, are not necessarily Christian values, but it also has to do with the politics of our day, our country. So we are looking forward to hearing what will come from this big, huge Supreme Court case. I'm not sure if it's as huge as we think, because I'm not sure if it's going to be directly applied to Facebook, to Twitter. But what it's doing is it's starting to crack the ice. It's sort of a low hanging fruit, and it's cracking the ice. And what a lot of people hope is that the Supreme Court will force Facebook to adhere to First Amendment versus actually having legislation start to break some of these companies up as they get so big. They become a monopoly of social or of the social order of our society that they become almost a danger and a threat to a whole population set, which is conservative thinkers, certain Christians, most Christians, and so it becomes a problem. Very interesting items coming up to play. Now, as this becomes one of the first of its kind, what happens is as the courts learn more about these different problems that are at play, and it's not Facebook particularly, but it happens to be a public access television network is considered a state actor, which can be sued. So what's going to happen is they're going to learn more about these problems and issues and see as they learn more about them, it becomes sort of a momentum gathering event, which allows the court to prepare for more complicated rulings that have to deal with big companies who have big lobbying dollars, who have uh, big skin in the game, and everyone uses Facebook. So even the legislation they don't even want to really address it because oh, who's going to mess with my Facebook? I'll be seen as a a person who is against the people. So it becomes a momentum gathering event. This thing right here, win, lose, or draw. This is good. Now, what we need to get is our legislation in place to get a First Amendment. Not a First Amendment, but a Bill of Rights for the internet of sorts, where we address privacy, we address the issue of First Amendment, we address a lot of these issues that have not been addressed because the technology has outpaced our legislature's ability to create and approve laws, much less amendments, which I think we all know that something needs to be done. If you don't think so, stay tuned. We will be dealing with more of these issues coming up soon. Take good care, my friends.